All right. Hello, and welcome everyone to our Techspressionist virtual salon. The date is the 26th of October, right before Halloween, and things are getting spoopy in some places. I know we've updated our doorbell's ringtone to be like I'm not even sure what the name of it is. We looked it up, but it's like box uh is yeah, that. So yeah, we going all out, kind of, but not really. Anyway, joining me is our community, or some of our community of wonderful artists that we have. We have Colin Goldberg, who coined the term Techspressionism and helped that get off and helped introduce me to all these wonderful people. We have people like our great wizard, Michael Price, over there. And just a bunch of other familiar and some unfamiliar faces that I have not seen before. But yeah, we've been doing this for over 2 years now, and I hope it keeps going for a very long time. And today we have, for our discussion, or the way our format for today is another open discussion. It is about something that has been circulating in the media now for probably about a year and a half or so, or actually, oh, well, I mean, it's been circulating for longer than that, but didn't really get to mainstream attention until fairly recently, in the grand scheme of things. And that, my dear friends and viewers, is NFTs, the things that some people love to hate on, and then other people are literally making their whole personality about it. It is a very controversial thing that has, utility. I will say that it has great utility for a lot of things. Communities have popped up circulating around NFTs. People's careers have changed as a result of NFTs. It's been a life-changing experience for some people as well, because they've been able to capitalize on it in such a way that they've done things like pay off their student loan debt or buy a house for the first time. You have people in less than, or countries that are doing not so great economically, that are able to bring themselves up, support themselves, and survive, all based off of crypto and NFTs. So it's something that's exceptionally disruptive for a lot of the I would say modern paradigm, so to speak. And it's got a lot of big corporations interested. It's gotten a lot of blowback because when something's disruptive, everyone's got to have an opinion on it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I guess the first question that I'm going to pose to everyone that's here right now is, what are your general thoughts on NFTs at this time? And anybody can raise their hand and I will get to you in order, but that's how we're kicking things off. Or no one has thoughts? Oh, people have thoughts. It's just that I was lagging. All right. All right, guess we will kick things off first with Colin.
Hey, Davo. Yeah, I just wanted to say, briefly, how I first got introduced to NFTs, which was through this group. And it was really one of the artists who started coming early on, Andrea Bonaceto, who, he was the person who he was minting stuff on Rarible at the time, and I was also on Rarible playing around and just sort of getting my feet wet, and he kind of helped me, go through the process, and we were chatting, and then a couple weeks later, I saw that he had done this project with Nifty Gateway, where he basically minted an NFT in collaboration with a humanoid robot from a lab called Hanson Robotics in Hong Kong, and it made headlines because the collaborative piece sold for somewhere around $700,000, and it was a story that actually saw my local news. It was one of those syndicated stories, and I almost fell off the couch when I was sitting there with my wife. Like, I just chatted with that guy recently, and like here he is on the news, like doing this
Mhm.
project, which totally blew my mind. And you know, since then, the phenomenon has really just kind of gone beyond anything that I would have ever envisioned as far as the popularity of it goes. And it's really interesting to see how we were this little sort of community that was happening, and now there's all of these NFT based communities that have sprung up on the internet. And I sort of see Techspressionism almost as like a bridge community that is, like a lot of the people who came in here were coming from the standpoint of being traditional artists, working in physical media, myself included, in terms of like feeding both camps. And so it's just been a really interesting evolution to see, how the space has, how the NFT space has developed, and how like we've sort of grown as a group. Scojo, definitely has been a big driving force in, connecting us to Niftorian and that team over there. And the whole accelerator program has been an awesome educational experience, for anyone who's interested in learning about NFTs and minting. I'd highly recommend, getting in touch with the folks over at Niftorian and applying for their accelerator program, which has really been a great experience for me personally. But I'm just going to share the time. If there's time later on, I'd be happy to share some stuff I've been working on. And I would definitely encourage you guys over the course of this salon, also, as long as Davo is cool with it as moderator, to share what you've been doing through screen share as far as any kind of recent drops, or if you have a drop in the works, let us know what you're up to, and definitely show and tell. So I'm going to share the time.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Colin. All right. I'll add to that though, like as far as this community is concerned, we had quite a few people that were very skeptical at the start about NFTs and their place in the art world or art community at large. And there were feelings that it's like a short-term gimmick, it was a fad, that kind of thing. But I think at least some of those people have probably actually changed their tune at this point.
Oh, and I wanted to also mention real quick, Andrea, who I mentioned early on, he, I just reached out to him recently, and he just actually sold a piece, an NFT piece, I believe, at Christie's. So definitely, has moved, in a very fast trajectory as
Mhm.
far as this area goes. I'm going to paste a link to his site in the chat too. And there's an interview on the Techspressionism site that I did with him early on. And I'll share that in there as well.
Yeah, I remember that too. It's crazy. All right, thank you for that. And again, that link is in the chat. If you have that pulled up, you go ahead and click that. If you are a viewer on YouTube, well, we'll see. All right, moving right along with Grenada.
Well, I think that NFTs are an excellent tool for artists, visual artists, and writers, actually, as well as other artists, to find a conduit to expand their audience and also to increase their revenues and to gain control over the revenue streams surrounding their works. Now, right now, I'm enrolled in the Niftorian program as part of the third cohort. And also at the same time, I am uh, participating in a artist collaborative where I'm the only expressionist in the group. The others are, traditional painters and whatnot. And I moved the group to explore the use of artificial intelligence in shaping the narrative that the other artists and I would develop around the theme of the essential nature of artists in our society. And the ultimate objective, of course, would be NFTs. Um, the society at large is not really ready to embrace NFTs. People who love art are very suspicious,
Mm.
oftentimes, of artificial intelligence. But my thoughts are that if we do not um, put our imprint on this nascent artistic tool, then it will develop without us. It's already a multi-billion-dollar
Mm.
industry, you know, and how many of us have a chunk of that? Not a whole lot, but it'd be
No.
nice. It would be nice to gain part of that market share. And I don't think that it's a faraway dream for us to be able to do so. So I am pro NFT because it ain't going nowhere.
Yep, and I know I've made that point several times myself.
Yeah.
At this current time, they are called NFTs, but the concept behind them, that's not going anywhere. Like the idea of using something to generate, you know, residual royalty sales off of a piece of artwork, that's not going anywhere. Like being able to have like a public ledger of exchanges, that's not going anywhere. So at this time, um the name NFT is probably going to be pretty well known, but it's going to evolve into something else, and people aren't going to even realize that the
Hmm.
idea was initially an NFT at the base.
Right. Yep.
So I'm waiting for that time.
Yeah. May
I'm
happen sooner rather than later. We'll see.
good, and I'm keeping a mental note of all the naysayers, so that like when it does happen and it does eventually, change its name, I was like, huh, you're singing its praises now, but before you were did not think too highly of it. So what happened? Waiting for that moment.
Yeah,
But
money happened.
yeah,
Put
that.
it in money. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Vernena. All right, next up we have Tommy. Is your
I think that worked, right? Okay.
Yep.
I'm
All
sorry.
right.
Thanks, Dava. So I'll take up that challenge of being the naysayer since nobody else has yet. I am deeply skeptical and participating fully in the NFT sort of phenomenon, if you will. And I agree the name is going to change and it'll be the same thing. Right now, there's some cohort of people that are switching from Twitter to Reddit, and they're already saying they're not NFTs anymore, they're digital collectibles or this or that. So cool. I'm not a skeptic that they're going to survive. I was talking to a curator, and by the way, I agree. Vernita was saying, it's only a matter of time until galleries really embrace it, and that's happening right now. A lot of the sort of more forward-thinking galleries are very much using NFTs within their, they're like, hey, if somebody wants to pay us for it, we'll sell it. No problem. That said, it does foreground commodification of artwork as the point, which I have a problem with as, somebody who comes from a mindset of Fluxus or Dada, of making things that are unsellable. As a digital artist in the past, I had no problem with that. But now all of a sudden my work is completely commodifiable. And how does that change how I approach things? How does that change my attention? And I got to tell you, I spend a lot of time checking my history and object and seeing if I had a sale since the last time I checked. Is it Skinner, the rats that hit the button and they're not sure if a piece of food's going to come out, and sometimes it does, so they always keep hitting that button. I kind of feel like I'm in a Skinner box. So it's an interesting moment. I think it's something that we should document because I think it is the beginning of something much greater that we're really building right now. So I'm not going to say anymore. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's always nice to have dissenters. we don't always or even need to be always in agreement. I wouldn't even think that that's an ideal situation, because sometimes you miss things in discussions when everyone's always in agreement. So as long as it's done respectfully anyway, which I don't think anybody here has a problem with that. All right. Next up we have Michael Price.
Hey, Davo.
Hey.
I've definitely been on the skeptic side, not for the technology itself, but for me personally as an artist. So I would like to talk, I guess I have an announcement and I'd like to share that with the group. It's really interesting because if it weren't for Techspressionism, if it weren't for Skojo and Niftorian, this project for me probably would not have happened. It would have been probably in some other artist's hands. So I would like to share my screen if I have a couple minutes here to talk about this project that I have been involved with for the last several months. You can see this okay?
Yep.
All right, so there's a group out there called Crowdfunded Cures, and it is approaching being able to fund clinical trials for medicine. In the US, obviously, we all know that new medicines cost lots of money to develop, and it's all based on patents. And so what Crowdfunded Cures is approaching is a new way to raise money for charitable medical purpose, where the donations are paid out for successful clinical trials. And this is the big factor in this, is that clinical trials are needed in order to get insurance companies, the medical community to get behind whatever that medicine is. And so Crowdfunded Cures is looking to use NFTs and my artwork now, since I'm involved, to help raise money through donations, where the NFTs will then be pooled and become like a fund for those people who want to get out there and do clinical trials for medicines, that if they can get successful clinical trials, that then Crowdfunded Cures will help fund those successful trials. So it's kind of a retroactive funding mechanism for this efficacy of medicinal tests. Their initial area in which they are funding or looking to fund are psychedelics for medicine, like ketamine. And there's been a lot of early trials that other people are doing for things like PTSD and other areas where psychedelics have been shown to have efficacy. Now we need like really good clinical trials where that can be done. And this is where Crowdfunded Cures is looking to get in to help monetize clinical trials, and then finding new medicines that aren't going to cost an arm or a leg, that will be available at much cheaper rates. So what's going on is I got noticed through the Niftorian process when I did my presentation back in summer, and a friend of mine invited another person to come and see my artwork. They thought I was good. Corey's here in the audience. Thanks, Corey. And so here's what's going on right now is that Crowdfunded Cures is going to distribute this first NFT as a ticket to get to their Discord site prior to launch. And then just before launch, they're going to allow those people who are the ticket holders to get this other NFT as a free access to a pre-sale area. What I did over the summer, and it took a lot of work, was created 1,001 NFTs using Midjourney. So they're all unique. There are many variations, but thankfully, with my gaming background, I was able to sustain creating 1,001 images without going insane, and hopefully maintaining some sense of integrity in the work without going to, you know, some are better than others, but I had to create everything based around this idea of psychedelics as medicine. So using the DNA double helix, the ketamine structure of the molecule as artwork. I tried coming up with different ideas like, oh, what if Leonardo da Vinci might have you know, stumbled upon something like this. So trying to create interesting different kinds of artwork based on this thematic idea. I went even and did a you know, something that would have been like a Victorian steampunk idea, where you can see a bit of the DNA molecule and then the others behind that. Now, the big thing here, again, like I wanted to emphasize, is the idea of clinical trials. And so I created some artwork like, what would it look like if we could do psychedelics in medicine? So I thought about the old apothecaries and make these very accessible and available. And psychedelics dealing with the mind and how the mind can change perceptions, and how our perceptions and how the chemistry inside our body oftentimes dictates how we see the world around us. And so a lot of the artwork that I created was around the eye. Sorry for the noise. Hopefully it's not too loud. And so these are some of the artworks that are going to be included in the entire NFT collection. Went with different landscapes. And the last thing that I wanted to notify or to show is that I didn't want to create something that was all just like grandiose or going into la la land of psychedelics. This is an important factor. This is an important thing that where NFTs can do good for humanity, because in this last piece that I wanted to show, this umbrella, which is kind of shielding the two central characters, is created from the medicines, and the people outside there indicate how often people do not get access to medicine because they can't afford it. This is an alternative model that hopefully is going to be able to provide access to people getting medicine. So thanks for letting me share and present the project that I've been working on.
Oh,
It's
thank
been
you.
really interesting and something I can get behind, because it's not just creating JPEGs, but it's actually creating artwork that goes along with something that goes with donations that can help scientists, pharmacy companies, other people getting behind this and hopefully raising money for doing good. Thank you. I know it took a little longer, but just wanted to get into the whole thing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And that's a very important part about the discussion, especially when it comes to, I will say, the people that aren't even necessarily in or working around NFTs. They tend to focus on like the incidents that scamming happens, or that people are being exploited out of their money and that kind of thing. And they only focus on that and just completely ignore all the positive things that have come from, you know, these ideas and this kind of work. And I think it's regrettable that's happened. And, you know, I try to change those conversations when I see them veering into that territory. Because I mean, just like any kind of good thing or even new thing that happens, yeah, sure, people are going to use it badly. Like that's gonna happen. But you can't discount the entire thing because some people are using it badly. There's actually plenty of things that fall into that category. The internet, for example, one of those things, like the internet as a tool in itself, a lot of potential for good. Some people will use it for bad things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the entirety of the internet is this bad place just for scamming people and, you know, tearing down humanity. It's not. So NFTs essentially an extension of that whole idea. It is a tool for good or bad, whoever the tool user is, that's how it's going to be used. And if there's more good people using, there's going to be more good outcomes that come of it. All right. And next up, we have Renata.
Thank you, Davo. I have a question. I'm going to show a short video, and I've never had to do anything about sound, but do I need to do something about sound?
If you're going to share the sound, there's like an additional setting when you click share screen. I think like it's a little up arrow that says share with sound or share with optimized sound, something like that.
Yeah, there should be. I think it's a checkbox.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I got it. So
right.
we're good. Okay, so I started making, oh, what's this going on now? Password. Sorry, folks.
It's all good. We're used to technical difficulties here.
Okay, there we are. I talked to Giovanna, actually. She was the first person who gave me some help with buying crypto when I decided to go into NFTs on my own. As an artist, I've always felt very independent of organizations and clubs and institutions. And so it felt like this was a way of taking back some control, or it's just another way of expressing the work that I do. So my project that I'm going to tell you about is called Marlinspike. And Marlinspike is a castle where Marlena Svenskaya-Szewska, who you see on the screen here, she lives there. And here you see her in her Sgt. Pepper's garb. And much like Charles Dickens, Marlinspike is a saga that goes on for quite a long time. And what happens is when people purchase one of the NFTs to do with the story, then it unlocks a chapter on my website. So this is a true story about Marlena Svenskaya-Szewska. I ask of you, don't judge by looks. Innocence and beauty are weapons of stealth. Be warned, what she gets up to may disturb you. Even though readers know there is always a story behind the story, they're not prepared for the strangeness that is going to emerge. If you're watching as well as reading, the understory explodes in all its mystery and dark Gothic weirdness. Marlena is there as your guide, your interpreter, and your seducer. Do you want to see what I mean? She's in front of the Candy Pane Inn on a lovely spring day. It's nice, the sunlight dances on her shoulders. Now slow down and look at that moving bank of clouds above her. They're going to change. Something is coming. Lights have come on in the inn. Look at its windows. The derangement begins. So there are various characters in the story of Marlinspike, including things like the ampersand you see here. There's another view of the Candy Pane Inn. That's what it looks like. It's on Foundation. And I'm proud to say that one of the Marlinspike videos has been accepted into the Techspressionism collection on Foundation. Quickly, I'm going to take you through my other platform, which is First Dibs. And I have both still images and video on this one. I call them animated NFTs. The stills belong to a collection called Indigo gastraquill. This is a still from one of the videos, and I'm going to close by playing you an excerpt from Rocka Spiky, which has been screened in a few places, but I've also got it on First Dibs as an NFT. So please crank your speakers up high. The music is my own, as are the images. Just before I close, I wanted to give a shout out to Niftorian and Skojo, who told me about the project. I was in their first Artist Accelerator program for NFTs, and I highly recommend it. Thank you.
Man, thank you. All right. See, moving along. I think Susan is next.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey, hi. So I'm just gonna, I had some thoughts to share, and I also wanted to share a little bit of what I've been doing, because I am doing NFTs. And mostly I got started because for a couple of reasons, which may be true for others, which had to do with the fact that I was already doing digital work. I shifted from hard copy photography, mixed media pieces, and I did that. I started shifting around 2016, but when the pandemic started, I just went totally into digital. And then I found the salon, and I was going to the Techspressionism salons, and at the same time, I'm in a group called Art Next Level, a mentoring group with Sergio Gomez. And at some point in the last year, he started talking about NFTs, and he created a course through the online platform. So I did the course and I thought about it, and then I watched what other people were doing. I watched other people do the Niftorian, and I also went into my files. I have like thousands of files, and I started cataloging them into sections that I thought might be good for NFTs. Like, this is before I'd done anything. Little did I know where I would end up going. And then through that process, I decided to start, let's see them. And there were people that helped me. Like, I asked questions. I asked Renata. I think I remember asking Cynthia questions, because I did not understand how it was working. And then as I slowly got into it, I began to feel like it was kind of an adventure, like a challenge. Like, I got to figure this out. And so I was watching other people and watching the people that had done Salon. And I chose initially to use still images from my files and I just happened to pick roses. And what happened for me was I went from posting these still images that were created in a way that I was already working, which was with iPad and creating textures. And then I started moving into using, and I had this whole idea that I would do like 6 or 7, and that would be it. I'd do another collection. Well, now I'm at a number 17 in the series, and I'm starting to do video. And so for me, it was truly an artist adventure. I went from one place and I ended up in another. And the work that I'm doing now has evolved. And I'd like to share a little bit of that. Let me see if I can do this. Desktop share. Okay. Here is, no. Here is my collection. And I'm gonna just go back here and show, like, this is how it started off with these still images. And I have them in my photo lab too. And then it ended up here. And I'm gonna go into my photos and show a couple of these bigger. So these pieces were based in the ideas that I had about what things are beautiful. And then I started doing things like this. Let me see if it'll play. I'm not sure the best way to play this. I'm going to try. I started using video editing apps to create these sort of vignette motifs. Tommy used that word motif when he was talking about it. And then I was writing stories. So within each of the pieces, I have to make that stop. Stop. Oh, it'll play. He plays here automatically on that. Just a minute. Stop. Okay. I write a story, and the part that what started happening is that the roses took on a symbolic meaning, and I began to think about how we as humans present in the world, and how the contemplation of the roses and their way of being could be a vehicle for us as humans. And so over time, I began thinking about this more and more, about how can we be kind and reflective human beings and use the roses in that way. So I'm going to show the last one that I created. And also, I decided to use, here it is. I also decided to use Spanish because I lived and went to school in Spain and in Mexico when I was younger, and I taught Spanish as a younger adult. And that language informs part of my consciousness. Sometimes I just think in Spanish a little bit, and I wanted to bring that part of myself to the front more. And I thought that also using more than one language was a way to communicate that had more than one avenue of communication. So, and also I studied botany. So it ties a lot of my experiences together. And I am in the Victorian Accelerator, and I hope to be my plan is to produce more of these, and also to bring in some kind of utility, but mostly I'm hoping that people who are interested in contemplation and being better humans will be part of who I connect with. So, okay, I need to get out of the share. No. Stop share.
All right, well, thank you so much, Susan.
You're
Well,
welcome.
thank you for sharing.
Oops.
I often have flowers popping up in some of my works too, inadvertently, but it happens.
Yeah, the world of roses is pretty big. I didn't know how much big it was. All right, thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Patrick.
Yikes. Okay. Well,
That's not a good response to start with.
no, it's kind of interesting because I mean, let's see here. I think I take a almost like an inverse bell curve on this sort of situation, because of the fact that I was aware of this sort of thing coming when a good colleague of mine, Kevin McCoy, did some of the first experiments in creating the space in 2015, and then I was part of their his project called Public Key Private Key, that's in the Whitney collection in 2018. That's going to have a second component to it. That's going to be on Feral File next month, actually. But no, it's strange. In that it's that NFTs I think of in this way, that having been someone who's been between contemporary art and the Second Life space, saying that, well, just the contemporary artists just need to the contemporary curators just need to get in the Second Life and see what happens, and they'll understand that all this is exactly what we need to do. And there was a point where the Chinese artist Cao Fei did her interpretation of Beijing in Second Life and was showing it at Serpentine Gallery, and I just kind of said, okay, well, we were discussing this while it was being built, and afterwards she was just wondering why people didn't weren't engaging with it, and and when she offered for people to work with her on the on a project on the island for for a major biennial, it's like not too many people came. And I think what happened is that what this told me is, I said that, kind of quoting Corey Archangel, there's many art worlds, and and I think the NFT space is a new one with its own set of characters. And like the Second Life space actually did have a lot of contemporary artists in it, but I think this whole thing is a Venn diagram, and I've been very slow with it because of the fact that I have a friend, Vinay Gupta, who was part of the launch team with Vitaly Buterin, for Ethereum, and he wrote the blockchain policy for Dubai. And then there's a book that a very good friend of mine, Ruth Catlow, edited, called Artists Rethinking the Blockchain, and she just did a talk at Serpentine. And so the thing is that, to me, I said, okay, this is interesting, and I follow up with Christian saying that this is not a medium. It's a I think really the biggest function of this thing is that it gives provenance to something that could not be proven well before. And I think that's I think that's really probably the biggest innovation that that blockchain, blockchain and assets, have, and then that then captures value, which, and I think that's benefited artists a lot. But also on the other hand, things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, have been proven to contribute to global, climate change. But the thing is we can also then, say, okay, what about streaming? What about this? What about that? Well, they all do. So they all need to be, looked at. But, I'm starting to get, so this is why my first NFT, I do NFTs, but not many. Did one called These 7,000 Oaks Do Not Exist, having to do with, the website, this cat does not exist, this person does not exist. It's based AI based. I did 7,000 oak trees, using AI, because AI also pulls a lot of CO2, and I made an NFT with it on Object, which uses a Tezos chain, which I'll get to in just a second. But it's just the fact that I've always thought about NFTs as something that I wanted to get involved in, as a delivery method when it felt right, and and when I felt like there was like a body of work, and this is a delivery method and that sort of thing, and it's kind of worked. And I've only really kind of felt right about it, from a critical point of view. And so what I think is that I think that there are a lot of improvements in the field. I'm going to say the field rather than the space. I look at it as a field on a Venn diagram. In that with Ethereum 2 popping out, that Tezos is becoming the efforts of the Tezos Foundation backing up artists a lot, looking at Tezos as an art chain, I think is really interesting to me. And being that it's relatively carbon neutral, I think is really encouraging. But then, so, I have some bodies of work, which I'm probably going to mint, and I'm also very pleased that Nagin and I are, when Nagin, of course, at this point is managing, today is the 40th day of the death of Masa Amini, which has been a very big day. So we were online a little bit, but the blackout is still a bit of a problem. But anyhow, we're happy to be part of the Techspressionism collection as well. But I think I'm very ambivalent. And on one hand, I think that there are so many friends of mine in the art space, and a lot of the people who've done like the Christie's and Sotheby's things are friends of mine who've done, the early things. But I just see so many people who have basically just kind of really chucked a lot of their integrity about a lot of their values they've had, basically chasing money on this. And that's not a problem. But I mean, but the thing is there seemed to be this kind of allure to this space is almost sort of like guaranteed money. And it isn't, because of the fact that it's a space that is a space unto itself. And if you get established in that space and you get people to believe you and you create a value proposition, it's a perfectly fine business model, and I know that I'm probably not sounding fun, and sounding probably too academic and too critical, but, but on the other hand, I also think about things. I think NFTs, as they become more carbon neutral, are a fine space to get involved in. I'm kind of interested in Niftorian myself, and but on the other hand, I also realized that I sat in on a lecture at the Albright Knox at where Tina Rivers Ryan, I forget who was with her, they were talking about conservation, and they were talking about basically GIF as being the only file type that's survived since 1990, and TIFF is the only really truly migratable form, because it's completely unencoded, and you can take that data and you can turn it into whatever it has, just the raw data. And what does that mean? It means that I think NFT has a lot of if you can nail down a lot of the CO2 problems, and you can nail down the the idea of migration of digital media as a and the curatorial problems with it. I think there's a lot of stuff to it, but the thing is that we were talking about this. In other words, it's like the chains are going to change over time, and there's no guarantee that the NFT as we know it is going to exist in 5 or 10 years, or blockchains as we know them will exist in 5 to 10 years. And that's just technology. So, I mean, does that mean, we should poo-poo it, or this is no, but I think, so it's like Davo, as you were kind of saying, is like, there's the for and there's the against. I said, no, I think we should just be going into this when it feels right, and when your eyes are open, and what you see the mechanism for what it is. And and I think that's I only have 3 NFTs in collections. One is the oak piece. The other one is one of the pieces that I did from my 3D scans of the UAE, and that went through the British Journal of Photography. And the third one's in Techspressionism. And I guess I hope that I haven't completely and utterly bored everybody, but with this really deep dive on it, it's just a matter of saying, I think that NFT is, NFTs are a part of technology that are evident, and they're here, and they're things that we need to think about it. But I think what happens is that I think that there's like, you either for or against it. But I think really what happens is I think that they deserve a deep dive on what they are and how they affect us, and whether they're right for us, and whether we're how we feel from a perspective of our own practice and our own integrity. I'm done.
Well, thank you for that.
Sorry, that was a lecture, and I apologize.
No, it's okay, Professor Lichty.
Yes.
No, but no, you're right. And we do tend to look at things as either being for and against, but there that is kind of a nebulous thing too, because it's like, for me at this time, or like it changes.
Yeah, sure.
Or it can change. And I think in general, when it comes to a lot of things, just nuance is lost, because people very much want to stick to a camp. So when they're discussing certain topics like this, but the camps themselves they're nebulous, because there's often overlap between ideas. Like, there's things that you can agree on. It's like, oh, I can't consent to that quite yet.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a discussion, but it doesn't always end up being a discussion.
No. And what I think is very interesting is, like, with various camps of I'd say mediated or networked art, or things like that, or digitally digitally facilitated art, as I think Christian would probably wind up saying, is that there's camps want to promote, camps want to champion themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But what happens is that when you come in with kind of things like, it's like, I get you here, but I'm not quite right with that part, and I wonder what's going to happen here. It's like,
well, to be a champion, you have to have something to slay, right?
but or the other thing is, you know what, is that I think it's much more the idea of Buckminster Fuller. In other words, the idea is like, to be critical, you need to have a, a suggestion on a way forward.
Right.
And I think that's the thing. In other words, it's like either yes, no, and yes, no usually doesn't have a way forward. It's either it's
Nah.
like I'm right and you're wrong, or it's like or my future is going to be the thing, or it's like, what if we're all wrong, or what if we're all right, and I think the kind of like the scientific, process of the why,
Mhm.
and the why, what, and how, and
Mhm.
and but what happens is that sometimes so many of us are just so damn busy, just trying to keep our heads above water. We don't have time to think about this crap, and that's my job.
Right.
So anyway, I'll shut up.
It's all good. Your input's always welcome here.
I know I've said this before and I apologize, but it's the only way I can make the reference for all of you. I'm probably older than every one of you. And I'm old enough to remember when action painting started or pop art started. And what was useful was it was pretty easy to find it. If you wanted to find out about it, you could see it. It was easy to print in magazines, for example. It was easy to go down to galleries. It very quickly became available via big collectors in private parties and in other museum type shows, whereas NFTs isn't. The only thing I can think of is the Bored Ape thing. I see that a lot. Every time somebody talks about NFTs or publishes a story, I see that image. But that's the only thing that pops into my mind when anybody says NFT to me.
Oh, people.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I probably don't look at much of it as the rest of you do. What I'm saying is that it seems to have limited access to the general public. So the discussion level is much calmer, much cooler than it was when action painting and pop art came out. There was a lot more active busyness going on, a lot of talk. And that helped. It helped the understanding process for the general public, and it helped the artist to decide where they were in that field, how they were going to incorporate that or not within their work. And that element doesn't seem to be here very much in NFT. What I hear most of the discussion is more about money. I hear that conversation a lot as it relates to NFTs and the investment quality and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
There seems to be the art element of it seems to have taken a back seat to all of the other aspects of it. And that bothers me a great deal.
I think that's intrinsic to the community, because I mean, there's one theory about NFTs, that on one hand, NFTs got popular because, in part because there was a whole community of crypto millionaires and crypto billionaires who weren't able to unload their market cap, into fiat currency and that sort of thing. They need a place to put their value without crashing their own currency. So the thing is, if they were cashing out on fiat currency, they'd crash the market, with having all these billions. That's right. So how do you maintain the valuation of what you have without destroying your own value? And I think, the what kind of came up, partially, with Bored Ape and all that sort of thing, as part of this was pretty clever. So but the thing is that, this idea of the circle on the Venn diagram, in other words, is like the community, a lot of it is, artists connecting with, with crypto millionaires and that sort of thing, and having this certain sort of, transactional relationship and that sort of thing. Myself, I think I'm comfortable now with, probably getting very active on object and possibly selling my work for maybe, as NFTs for anywhere from like $25 to $100 a piece and that sort of thing, and just seeing how things go with that, and working in scale, and but we'll see. I'm not there yet.
All right. Well, appreciate you guys' input. I know there was a couple other people that wanted to say a few things, but appreciate the discussion so far. Thank you. All right. I know Giovanna, I think, had her hand up.
Yeah, I have a little presentation, and also I like to share some thought that still, like, people don't know what is an NFT, or people think NFT is a scam. A lot of people may not even remember NFT is a non-fungible tokens, which means a smart contract. I'm going to share my music NFT right now. This is a really great platform. This is an app I use that I can actually make my music. So I can start from presentation here. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a mobile app called Our Song that I was verified creators and the artists. They are based in Asia, but they back out with a very big, like Asia Spotify company. I used to work for a record company, and I do a lot of remix. So the idea is like a remix. So John Legend, the Academy Award producer, is also one of the co-founder. So the idea is I joined the competition. They always they have something like the music source, the MP3, like sub licensing collab, where you just purchase one NFT. So you can get the artwork. You can also get the MP3 that you do your own remix. So I do my remix, and I also I made my music NFT, which they probably they're most easiest one that you can make music NFT. You can just use a mobile phone once you're ready, and you upload. You download the mobile app, you upload, and you can actually just list for sale. I use a couple different app. I use a GarageBand. I use a Photoshop. I use a Bazaar. I use a Premiere Rush. Most probably, if you have a GarageBand, that is a lot of loop and a lot of they have this music library. You can sampling different type of style, and you can just twist, just play around with the music. So I also I created a whole new artwork for that. Recently, because we talk about if you cannot sell NFT, so what can you do? So I also turn NFT into physical artwork. So this is most probably they are NFTs before, but they are like more like a low resolution, like a JPEG. Which I think is really difficult if you want to do like an actual print. So if I want to turn into that, I have to turn the RGB into CMYK, and the color looks completely different. So which means I have to start to do all over again. So there's really a lot of work to do. I twist my arm, and I have a muscle ache because I literally work like at least 12 hours per day just to do all these retouch, and also I manipulate with the colors and use my glitch style. I want to also share I think I have to go to the other YouTube channel. I want to share my music too. Can you see my screen?
Mhm.
So this is the like a punk rock, and I mix it with the disco. So this is a garage band that when I work with these different type of sampling, and I just play with it. They do have an original song that's punk rock, and they have these new music level. And this is animations I did for them. So mostly because I think the greatest concept is that because a lot of DJ and producer these days they buy all the source files and also buy all type of music that you actually you can just reuse it. So they call these a remix, and especially for a lot of young musicians, DJ or artists, that you do need to have a lot of material to play with. And the best thing is that because the royalty share and everything is easy, then you can add like who earn what percentage. They think that actually solve the big problem. It's like a smart contract. It's not only NFT, but you can deal with the very difficult situation and the people they can get their share. So yeah, so that's about the new thing about NFT, I like to say. But of course, these days it's really not that great. But you can look the other way. Like I I'm not, people really don't know what I'm doing before I make NFT, even I create art. But NFT, that I cannot see any negative side as an artist or creator. You use the NFT as a part of your branding strategy. Okay, yeah, just like to say that.
Well, thank you, Giovanna.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sorry, I would have been clapping, but I have a cat on one arm. I had to kind of free it. All right. Well, apparently Tommy's doing the clapping for all of us. All right. So next up, we have Corey. I think that's Michael Price's friend, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was hanging out, of course, coming in to give Michael some love because he's an amazing artist, and being involved with crowdfunded cures and using the ability for art to help fund a impact medicine fund to take unmonopolizable therapies and drugs and take them to market, so that way people can pay $2 for a off prescription drug instead of $2,000 is clearly a meaningful thing. But the reason why I felt like I had to talk is because my background is I'm in the Web3 impact space. So that means I'm part owner of Crypto World, which is the first brick and mortar crypto store. We're actually talking about having a live NFT art gallery here in the next number of weeks. I'm also started the Doi Foundation, which finds meaningful Web3 projects all around the world and then understands kind of their utility, their use case, et cetera. And basically a number of other projects that all focus around really like, how can we change the world with this tech? And some of the conversations that started with Tommy with being rightfully skeptical, as we all should. One of the things that we say on our podcast is that whenever we say bring the FUD, because we have this aversion whenever people say no FUD, no fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's the exact opposite, is you should lean into that and try to understand what is it really, what are the use cases, what does it really look like? And then Patrick started talking, and then Lee, you kind of were giving your perception of not being able to see NFTs. And I kind of felt after I heard all this, I was like, all right, I got to kind of say some stuff. So first and foremost, I'm going to hopefully change the mindset about NFTs for some of you who may not have thought about it like this. So first off, Giovanna hit it spot on whenever she said that NFTs are a smart contract. So what its uses are almost entirely to the infinite realm of possibilities. So I'm going to just kind of throw out some use cases, and I'm going to talk about some real world stuff that you're not seeing, but is happening. That's all based off of this technology. So for instance, like based off of what I'm just going to reverse order, what Giovanna was talking about. Imagine with art or with music, if you didn't have to create the entire piece of music, but you could create one part of it, and then you own that one part forever. Meaning, let's say you created the bass line, And you said any artist in the entire world can use my bass line, and whenever you grab it, you put it into your music, and by smart contract, automatically with code, we don't have to trust each other, it automatically pays me back royalties and my family in royalties and their kids in royalties and their kids in royalties indefinitely, because it's all done on the blockchain without a mediating third party or government. All of a sudden you go, okay, what kind of music could you create? What if you could do that with art? What if you can also fractionalize the ownership of things like, let's say, your artworks, and you make it to where now and a piece of art that's worth, thousands or tens of thousands or 100,000s or millions. Well, if you are most of the world, you'll never be able to own that individually. But the moment you fractionalize that with an NFT, you can. And you can do the same thing with real estate. You can do the same, like, let's say you and 42,312 other people all owned by a smart contract, a piece of real estate that pays back rents. And then you get to vote on how that piece of property should be managed, so on and so forth. And and the list goes on and on and on and on. But to talk about, like, because there's 1,000 utilities, you could take any problem that you're talking about, say, hey, Corey, what about this problem? And I'll say, you can do an NFT with this, and this project's already doing it. This project's already talking about it. But to talk about art, because that's what we're all here for, I want to kind of change the mindset you've all had for a moment. This last Friday, I was with Tom Bilyeu. He sold Quest Nutrition for over $1 billion, and he started, basically, he wants to create the next Disney and leverage NFT tools in the metaverse. And the statement he used was, we are now creating borderless entertainment. So whenever let's say that you sit down at a table, you look at the table, you can see like a whole new world in front of you. Now the world changes in live time based off of the NFTs you hold, the people around you, the NFTs that they hold, and the actions that you take will create new NFTs. So let's say that you go to a race. Let's say that you're at NASCAR, you go to a race, you hold an NFT for a particular driver and their car blows up, or they get into a race. Like, you get an NFT, you basically program the contract to say, if something happens, then this other thing is created. So you have this art that literally evolves based off of the community, the individuals, and the experiences. The environment around it changes these NFTs. And based off those NFTs, you can say, okay, what's something fun we can do with that? Well, if you have, let's say, a certain NFT, you can get access to certain events other people can't, or you can get exclusive engagements with the race car driver, or you can get, like, maybe some fun swag that people can't get access to. And is whatever you can imagine. You just basically program this down and you do it. But what I want to give you a word for is where Tom Bilyeu is saying borderless entertainment. And by the way, that what I was talking about with the coffee table and being able to, like, put on a pair of glasses and, look at in a closet and sift through clothes and wear them, and then visualize you wearing them or somebody else wearing them. That's not 20 years from now. That's not even 10 years from now. That's not even 5 years from now. They're talking about trying to launch that this year, next year. That technology already exists where they can actually layer over a human body. You put on some glasses, you see an image over the top of them. That's the kind of artwork you could create. So I want you to take borderless entertainment and change it to borderless art. Everywhere that you go, the art surrounds you. The things that you love, the things that inspire you, you can hold those with you, and then the world can interact with you and your art and change everything you see. You put on a pair of Apple glasses, you walk down Times Square, and all of the walls will change based off the NFTs that you own. And also, too, you look at other people, and based off of whether or not you do or don't want to interact with them, they'll interact with you based off the NFTs that they own. So you can look at them and go, oh, gosh, looks like we both share an affinity for roses. Or, oh, you're part of this community, I'm part of that community, too. You can even have to, whenever you interact with each other, creates all new sets of NFTs. So imagine if art followed you everywhere. Because that's where we're going. We're going into the AR world, where whenever you walk outside, we're going to have a pair of Apple glasses. And we're not talking about 20 years from now. Not, once again, not 10 years from now, not 5 years from now. We're talking like years. Like, it already exists if you had a lot of money, meaning that's today's technology. It's just not cost effective for everyone yet. So you can walk down the street and your art doesn't have to stay at home on a wall. It's everywhere that you are. It's with everyone that you love. And you get to share this and you get to be immersed in it. And then in that way, what does that look like? I want my art to interact with me. How beautiful would that be? And I want to create art that interacts with other people. And I want that to interact with my communities. And all of that technology exists today. And anything else like that you kind of have envisioned, you go, okay, what if whenever somebody had a piece of my art, It gave them the ability to kind of interact with me during live book signings, or to get custom access automatically of, a talk of an event I have, or whatever you imagine. You can set that up in a smart contract and have it done automatically. The list goes on and on and on, but it's one of those things that even though people may not see it and the words will be different, NFTs are far bigger than I think all but a handful of people truly recognize. So I just had to jump in on that. And yeah. And so if anybody's got any questions, by the way, because living in that space about what real world utilities are, or especially like the crowdfunded cures, because Michael's project, beautiful art, like what that is, how it works, how the community engages in it, why an NFT, what are the gating mechanisms, what even is a gating mechanism for an NFT, et cetera. Let me know. You can reach out to Michael. I'm sure he can connect us.
Your narrative is very interesting, and I understand what you're saying. But the thought occurred to me as you spoke, when you talked about the interactivity of art, and the evolution of art and its mediation to the smart contract. Dorian Gray had a portrait that was interactive, and he had a Faustian smart contract, with the devil. And so it's just something to think about, this interactive portrait, interactive art, evolutionary art, etc., reflecting like things happen and then the picture changes. Dorian Gray's done that already. So Oscar Wilde was one up on us regarding NFTs. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I like that.
And I will say also, like, as interesting as all of that is, and it is fascinating to me, because I am one of those people that, I'm probably one of the few gamers in this community, but there is a franchise or genre of video game. It's called in Japan, it's called an isekai, it's another world stories, where the main character is transported to a different world. Initially it was just video games, sometimes it was fantasy worlds, whatever, but I was one of those people where I was like, I would love to be able to see this to the level and degree of technology that those games were in reality. One of my favorite franchises was called .hack. The game was called The World, and it had a lot of parallels with things like Second Life, and several aspects of what we're seeing right now in the metaverse. And I was like, oh, we're inching to get to that point. But as interesting as that is, and as fun as I think that would be to see that manifest in different ways, I can't also help but think about the upshots of, sure, there are all of these positive things that can come from this, sure, but what other like drawbacks are we going to see? And I think about what the internet has kind of done collectively to the world's attention span. It's dropped significantly because of how we consume information via the internet, and to the point where I want to say, gosh, what was it? I can't remember the actual numbers right now, and I can't pull it off the top of my head, but I know it's decreased noticeably that when it comes to even people with wanting to or trying to engage with our legal system, or looking at our laws and stuff like that, they literally don't have the attention span to get through like pages of these documents, because it's like, oh, this is too much, I'm just going to move on to the next thing, or look for somebody to summarize it for me. And we're losing certain things, and I think it can't be discounted what we could potentially lose by moving forward with this. Not saying that it's all going to be bad, I'm just saying it definitely does need to be thought about with a bit more care. And I want to say, with like most pieces of technology, I'm not sure there is enough time or care given to upshots that could go in the opposite way, or unintended side effects of this thing.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that, Davo. So the podcast that I have, we spent already, I don't know, since it's been on Spotify, probably 150 hours, going back and forth, and there's utopian vision, but there's also dystopian vision.
Right.
So you kind of go, okay, well, what if classism now can't escape anywhere? Like,
right.
based off of what you do or don't have, as far as like you go into Fortnite and maybe you've got the custom skin and that's cool, but what if you go out into the world and now everybody's looking at you without your custom skin? And maybe what does that mean to whether or not you can get a job, or whether or not you can get a
Right.
friend, or whether you create all these basically mechanisms to gate where everybody's at, to kind of separate out the haves from the have-nots, even in a digital, like, imaginary realm. And then you use that from control mechanisms with like CBDCs to control like who's got a certain NFT, meaning like the accepted class or the accepted people. The government can look at you and classify you as the accepted one. And then they could also then determine whether or not you should be accepted into certain environments, situations, whether or not you should get funds. So one of the things with NFTs is there's what they call an NTT, which is a non-transferable token. It's something that you get whenever it's basically an identifier about you. You can't transfer it. You can't sell it. So for instance, it's used a lot in zero proof technology. Like, let's say one of the projects I'm a part of that I co-founded is all about creating a decentralized governance, because there's no global accepted laws for property rights or contract interactions. And since there's DAOs and Web3 and things like that, you go, how do you create dispute resolutions outside of the legal system where there isn't a single governance, but you also do that in a way that's fair and equitable? Well, you need third-party intermediaries that are unknown, because they can be, at that point in time, you could pull them in and you could bribe them, if you will, especially whenever it comes to like tens or millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. That said, you create an NTT that allows me to say, okay, I know that this person is a lawyer. You know that this person has a high rating, but you don't know whether or not they're a man or a woman. You don't know how old they are. You don't know what country they're from. You don't need to know those things because they aren't relevant. It's like if you were going to get a loan, you wouldn't need to know their social security number, just whether or not they were creditworthy. Well, these NTTs, they sound great in theory. Some projects have used them for proof of helpfulness. Like if you do something good, they'll give you an NTT as a way to kind of like rewards for the community. And a lot of times they're attached with art, because that's beautiful to have these NTTs and you have them in your wallet and it's like, oh, I did a good thing. And that'll get you in other places. But then you also go, okay, what about whenever governments start doing that stuff? They have an NTT that says, okay, this person, is the kind of person that's, doesn't pay their taxes, or they're the kind of person that has a felony, and then you kind of go, well, is that fair to say whether or not somebody has a felony? And because it starts with something like that, like it starts with something where everybody want to know, okay, is this person on the child sex offender list? Right. I put my Apple AR glasses on. I want to see everyone in front of me and be able to visualize them. And then you go, well, where does that stop? So to that point, yeah, we could go on and on about the dystopian stuff, but from an art standpoint, I do think it's pretty cool, though, to be able to do generative art and a lot of these other things, and be able to kind of live an interactive environment. But yeah, plenty of art.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's dystopian or utopian or dystopian. I mean, Neil Stephenson pretty much wrote most of this stuff in 1995 in Snow Crash. Yeah. I mean, about 95% of everything that we're talking about here is pretty much in that blueprint. I mean, it's just there. Yeah. And so I think NTTs are a good thing. I mean, I think that's I think the idea of being able to verify one's identity in certain ways is, I think, necessary in this case. And but it's just this idea of it's I think the notion of having lived in Asia, and I mean not in East Asia, but I mean West Asia and Arabia, and gone out into the Caucasus and Central Asia and that sort of thing. The notion of access to things like always on AR technology and the infrastructures involved in that sort of thing, I mean, I'd say that's 20 years out minimum. And the thing is that, so what's going on here is that what I see the vision, which is, it's a very interesting vision. But the one thing is that, when we look at this, we have to think about it, as if we think about it as part of a global financial infrastructure, because we are talking about money most of the time with this. So how do we wind up having this as a globally integrated socioeconomic cultural structure that is accessible in Bangladesh. And so it's like, I mean, are you going to be interested in the fish farmer in Bangladesh? And but the thing is that, I mean, for this to really become the thing, then is that we need to think about how this has global adoption over fiat.
As many different directions as this discussion can go, unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot more time to do it. Yeah, well, at least not for our like formal recording time, because we are right at 7:02. And I will say, if you are willing to stick around, and we always do a discussion after our main recording time, so these conversations could definitely continue into that point. But I think so far, discussion for today has been pretty great, I'll say, as most of our discussions are. Always a lot of input, always a lot of back and forth. Well, maybe not back and forth, but people talking, sharing ideas, that kind of thing. And I appreciate the consistent civility, I'll say that, because that is not something that you always see in this era that we're currently living in. Civility has kind of gone by the wayside for a lot of people, especially on the internet. So being in spaces like this is literally a breath of fresh air, where we can share ideas freely and openly without too much friction going on.
Yeah, so to that point, sorry to drop, and I'm going to hand over there. Patrick, you're making a great point, and then my internet went out. So your point was that Asia is 20 years out. Apparently, I'm 20 years out because I can't even hold a stable internet connection.
There you go.
That's how it is. But anyway, folks, I think we can go ahead and wrap things up here, and at least for the formal part of our recording session. Thank you so much for coming and joining in, listening in, contributing to this discussion that we have. It has been my pleasure. And I think that's about it, unless anyone else has anything to say before we sign off.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to thank you, Davo, for your service in moderating and keeping this group sort of all interacting in a civil way. I feel like it just makes me really happy to see these familiar faces, time in and time out in these salons where you go on Twitter, you go into these Twitter spaces, and I've been, definitely spending some time there lately since the whole NFT thing has happened. And there's something to be said for actually like seeing familiar faces and getting to know people's body of work, their aesthetic, their philosophy, and I feel like that aspect of what Techspressionism is become, really sort of primary, in a way to me personally. Like people can define it however they want, but in the end, I mean, really, when I've sort of proposed the idea to Helen Harrison, she was like, well, maybe try to get an artist group together by organizing a show and see who sticks around. You know what I mean? And that's, really in the end, what it ends up sort of becoming is who's around. It's really interesting to look back at some of the old, collab shows and even NFT Now, which Ann Spalter curated. I look back on that show, and there was some. I mean, Tyler Hobbs was in that show, who created Fidenza. You know what I mean? I didn't know who he was back then. I was like, all right, and I started getting inquiries about that piece later on. And it's just interesting because, like Patrick was saying, with the idea of Venn diagrams, like all these different communities overlap in so many different ways. And, you know, I think it's really, you know, it's always interesting and satisfying to have this sort of discourse. So, you know, appreciate all you guys, and definitely Davo, it's good to have you back. So, without,
Don't lean back.
yeah, my cat's back there. There's been a mouse running around this entire time. I'm just like waiting to turn my camera on off and see if I could throw a towel over it and get it outside, because she's not doing her job apparently. But anyhow, without further ado, I think we're at time, so I'm going to stop recording in 3, 2, 1, and stop.